Most of us think that fear means we're doing something wrong. But sometimes fear is just a moment before we stop hiding. I did not start this channel to be seen. In fact, I've always been terrified of being seen. I think part of that fear comes from shame. You know how life sometimes has a way of shaping us quietly through experiences that we don't really have language for at the time, and then they happen, and before we realize, they become part of how we see ourselves. And sometimes you're just not ready to talk about those things because you have not even said certain things out loud to yourself yet. And another part is just who I really am. Being an introvert, I have always envisioned this very quiet, almost anonymous life for myself, building and creating privately without being watched, just being in my own world. I've never wanted to be known for what I do in this world, but I've always wanted to be known, if at all, for who I really am. But how can someone be truly known for who they really are if they don't want to be seen? So that was the first conflict. The deeper conflict was that I didn't want to be seen, but at the same time, I felt that I have to be visible, even though visibility was not something I would naturally seek. I've always known that my career, my productivity, my titles, none of it really defines who I really am. Those are just the roles, the social masks. Then what I am really, I'm just part of the consciousness experiencing itself in a variety of forms and seasons. I probably sound like Jim Carrey. And maybe one day I'll record a video about my awakening process. There has always been this very persistent sense that I was being asked to do something that was not really aligned with my comfort, but it has been aligned with my truth, and that's exactly where this tension lived. I'm talking about a sense of knowing, and knowing that doesn't shout, doesn't rush, but doesn't leave either. It's this very quiet place inside our hearts where the guidance shows up when we're still enough to listen. I first felt that call very clearly in 2021. That's when I started my YouTube channel, my first YouTube channel. At that time, I worked at PayPal, and our design team had a meeting with leadership. So we were proposing this new design for the product that we were working on. And I remember I finished sharing my screen and the flows that I had prepared, and then my coworker started sharing his screen. And then once he did it, what ended up happening is that he had an open tab in his browser with my YouTube channel. I was mortified when I saw that. I felt exposed, not because I've done something wrong, but because I was not ready to be visible, to be seen at that time. I remember I almost dropped my coffee, and there was this silence for a moment, and people just pretended that nothing happened. But you can imagine there was a meeting with 30 people on this call, all leadership, and basically everyone was able to see the name of my channel, my photo, and the snapshot of my video. I was so terrified that I actually ended up deleting my channel, and that happened not because I all of a sudden didn't feel the call, but because the shame and fear were louder at that time. Looking back, I don't see that moment as a failure. I see it as timing, because things I'm talking about right now, I would not have been able to talk about back then. Not because they were not true, but because they were not integrated yet, and truth has not yet passed through your body. It doesn't sound like truth, it sounds like theory, and I was never meant to speak from theory. For a very long time, I had a very convincing excuse. I had a very demanding career. I worked long hours. Sometimes I held 2 tech jobs at the same time. When I moved to Hawaii, I worked from early mornings, like 4:30, 5 a.m. to 5:30, 6 p.m. I was consulting for startups, mentoring other designers. I was just so busy, and honestly, looking back, I think I have subconsciously made myself so busy so that I have this perfect excuse not to start working on what I knew deep in my heart I needed to start working on. And every time this call returned, the call to create, to be visible, to speak up, I would just say, nah, I don't have time for this. And on the surface, that sounded very reasonable, but it was never about rejecting work or responsibility. It was about realizing that business has quietly become this way of avoiding listening. And there is a certain identity that comes with being very busy, being important, being needed, being productive. And this identity or ego gave me something to hide behind, even from God. And God has been very patient with me about that. He is so loving. Has been putting up with my stubbornness, with me being impatient, being fearful, resisting things. I would have already lost all the patience. But He hasn't. He's very patient and He's very loving. I've learned, however, that when you truly resist the direction that you're being led, these nudges or the inner knowing, it becomes less and less gentle. It doesn't really go away, and I've seen this pattern play out in my life multiple times. In 2022, when I asked to relocate and move from Hawaii back to Chicago, and I was so afraid, and I just went along with that, and later I realized I actually chose against myself. And then years later, actually this fall, the same situation happened, different company, the same question. It felt like the same test, not a punishment, but a check-in. Have you grown? Have you learned? Will you choose differently this time, or are you still this little bird that is afraid of everything? And this time, I chose differently, and something very interesting happened. Suddenly, I had time. No packed schedule, no meetings, no excuses. This time I could not tell God, I'm sorry, I'm busy, I don't have time. Actually, I heard this invitation again very loudly around my birthday this year, to give it a year, a 1-year commitment to create, to be visible, to share honestly, not to perform, not to chase outcomes, just to show up. And I didn't say yes immediately. I actually thought about it for quite a long time. I sat with it, and eventually on November 11th this year, I actually answered this call by posting my first video on this channel. So it's a 1-year commitment, and I guess we will check back in a year, so stay tuned. I also started writing my first book, something that I have been putting off for years. In fact, I've always known that I need or I have to write a book since I was a kid, and I just never had time for it. I never knew what it's going to be about. And then suddenly something in me shifted and I started writing. I couldn't stop. I was just in this state of flow that I have not felt for such a long time. You know, when the time goes by and you don't even realize it. You don't feel that it's already 4 or 5 hours past. You're just like, oh, well, I probably need to grab a bite because you feel hungry. You just didn't realize that the entire day has just flown by. I think it's one of the best feelings in the world. And I cannot believe that I'm about to say this, but I finished my manuscript yesterday. So I don't know, I feel like next year is going to be something very special, and I hope it's going to be special for you as well. Now back to this channel, why it was actually brought to existence. And probably I should have recorded this video as my first one, but hey, I guess we just go with the flow. So this channel now exists because silence has become more costly for me than being visible. And this is not about teaching, it's about truth moving through lived experience. I'm just sharing what I'm living through. the experience. So maybe you're watching this and you realize that you've also felt this knowing or sense that you need to be visible in some way, not because you want a platform, but because there is something in you that wants to be expressed, not for attention, not for validation, but because holding it inside has become heavier than letting it move. This isn't about proving. It's actually about responding to something you cannot unhear. So if you're here, you're not here by accident, and neither am I. So take it as a sign.